Hello everybody and welcome back to Dune Spice Wars, a really fantastic 4X real-time strategy game where today we're talking the perhaps unsexy but I promise you very exciting topic of paying your taxes. In this scenario, in order to play this out, I need to be playing as the smugglers. So here we are. Now, in this video, I'm going to take you through some tips and tricks around taxes, but also why you should pay them and some of the downsides. What happens when you don't? I've just suffered through a few difficult challenges to not paying my taxes to bring you this information. So without any further ado, let's jump straight in and talk taxes in Dune Spice Wars. First and foremost, taxes are paid with spice generation. This is probably obvious to you as you pan around the map looking for spice fields to harvest. Naturally, you're going to need spice to pay your taxes. The bar up in the top right, of course, can change between harvesting spice or exchanging it for money. In this playthrough, I'm deciding to not pay any taxes at all. You can see the bribe default. This occurs when you don't pay your taxes, and it stacks. You lose, in this case, -2 influence production, and I take a -10% penalty on my exchange rate, so I'll be making less money from my spice. As you can see in this clip, it's ×5. What that means is I've failed to pay my taxes 5 times in a row, and this bribe default penalty of -2 influence is actually -10. For whatever reason, it doesn't display it properly in this tooltip. You have to do the mental maths yourself, or hover over and find your influence, or find your spice exchange rate, whatever it may be. The important thing to know here is that you really do need to pay attention to this multiplier, because this is how many times you have failed to pay your taxes in a row. Like I say, in this case, I've done it 5 times in a row because I'm really trying to push the game to its limits to see if I can get these special rebels to appear. Spoiler alert, it's achievable. One other thing to note here, though, is that I have found that they don't appear until you fail to pay your taxes 3 times in a row. Here is a special game I've set up, and you can see that my bribe default up in the top here is at ×3. It's only just ticked over. I've paid no taxes whatsoever in this game, and now 3 times in, they're coming after me. So what does that actually mean? Well, firstly, you can see my CHOAM contract negotiation rate is pretty poor. I'm not making as much money. I've missed my imperial bribe. Yikes, this is the tax overlay here, the spice report, if you will. You can see that my exchange rate will start to decrease, and crucially, I won't be meeting my tax next time. But that's not what is actually the most important thing here. What really matters are these guys, the sardaukars, these locals that appear when you don't pay your taxes. As far as I can tell, like I say, it occurs playing as the smugglers the 3rd time you don't pay them in a row. Let's have a look at what these units actually are, because, spoiler alert, they're a lot stronger than the average rebel. Here you can see down the bottom left their overlay. They have 21 strength, some 600 health, 6 armor, 100 supply, and they're an executioner, which means that they execute enemies under 20% health. I'm going to slow this clip down a little bit and then play it for you later in the video in a faster speed, play through an attack at a faster speed so you can see what it actually looks like in full devastation mode. But there are a couple of important things to note here. Firstly, their health is as high or twice as strong as any other early unit in the game. Secondly, their combat strength, or their strength, is likely to overpower any other unit as well, or at least meet it. Their supply is slightly low, but at 100 supply, they're probably not going to struggle. It's also important to note, as you've noticed in this clip, they do just kind of appear out of nowhere, right? Where they're standing right now is literally like 2 footsteps away from where they appeared. So their supply isn't really an issue. I'll talk a little bit more about tactics and their supply later in the video. The final thing to note is, of course, their armor. They have 6 armor, very strong. Some ranged units may be able to penetrate their armor a little easier, but by and large, these guys are going to give you a rough as guts time. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later in the piece here as well. But one final thing I wanted to note before I move through into the nitty-gritty detail is that while all of this is playing out, I'm also suffering tremendously. Don't forget, these units will have flow-on effects, right? The impact of these guys spawning is incredibly detrimental. Not only will it wipe out my army, costing me potentially thousands of Solari to replace them, also, of course, they will take a village. That's the whole idea. If you fail to pay your taxes 3 times in a row here, as I have done with the smugglers, they will come and they will overthrow you. Here, they've done it. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about tactics. Tax tactics, if you will. What a fantastic pun. Either way, let's play through this scenario again and talk about how this actually plays out and what I could do to better it. Firstly, you'll note that the negative influence really adds up, right? -10 at the 5 times multiplier of not paying your taxes basically cripples your influence production in the early game, and that has snowball effects as well, particularly if you're not well aligned with the council, which you won't be as the smugglers until you're at least at 5,000 hegemony, probably when you start to earn some votes. So that's really detrimental. The negative exchange rate over time is incredibly detrimental as well, and I want to just highlight that again because it's an important part of the tactics. You will slowly bankrupt your economy if you don't pay your taxes, and that could potentially have the snowballing effect of then losing a village or being susceptible to an attack just like this one. Even losing one village could be detrimental, right? It could be your one village that's producing your water, your one village that's producing your manpower. And when these guys turn up, these incredibly overpowered rebels, they are designed to destroy, okay? And you'll see me here play out a couple of little tricks to try and defeat them. So I've got 4 units, as many as I can afford at this point in the game. And I've also used operations to cut their supply, weaken them, or boost my own health. And you'll see it's still not enough. Could I have played this a little bit better? Absolutely. But fundamentally, take a look at just how well they are able to destroy me while also being bombarded by missiles, by the way, from at least one adjacent territory, my city. If you take one thing away from this video, it should be that these guys, the sardaukar, are incredibly overpowered in the early game especially. As you move through into the later game, they will buff themselves as well, though, so take care. I've noticed that their combat strength tends to increase up to, I've seen them at around 30, so do take note. One final thing I would like to mention, in case you didn't see my tips and tricks video yesterday, this is one little trump card that you could pull out to defend yourself. It will work to hold them off, but it won't work to destroy them. So you'll need to have a backup plan. And part of that could be paying your taxes. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. You need 2 operations. One of them is ceasefire, and the other one will cut their supply lines. Here you can see me playing it out in a separate game. Poison the reserves and ceasefire. They will stay put, but they'll be unable to fight you. It's really powerful, actually. Basically, the ceasefire stops the fighting. The AI decides not to leave for whatever reason, stupidly. Perhaps this is an exploit. It probably is. And then the poison reserves will dwindle their reserves, their supply. And once they're out of supply, they won't be able to heal anymore and they'll perish. This is one way you could try and stop the taxman from coming to fight you. But by and large, the best way is just going to be to pay your taxes on time, folks. Thank you very much for watching. This was a painful discovery for me. Lots of trial and error. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next Dune Spice Wars video.